I love the Pokémon series, but they are games designed for children, and as such, they can be quite easy. Sometimes to the point that playing them is just not very engaging because of the lack of difficulty. I don't think a game needs to be hard to be fun, but some amount of resistance to seeing the end credits certainly helps. And that's why so many older Pokémon fans engage with the series through the Nuzlocke rule set, which changes Pokémon from a fun-filled adventure with your pets into a series of brutal battles with permadeath on the line. But YouTube has an entire cottage industry of Nuzlocke playthroughs, so if you want to stand out in this sea of videos, you have to do something different with your Nuzlocke. I've tried making the entire game double battles, as well as my own custom rule set, the Marthlock. And while both of those playthroughs were super fun, they didn't stand out as much as I would like, which is why I decided for my next Nuzlocke to take the creativity out of my hands and put it into my audience's. That's right, baby, we did an Egglocke, just like it's old school 2010s era YouTube. This content makes itself because I don't even have to write the jokes, y'all do. Sure, sometimes they're jokes at my expense, but all great artists suffer for their art. So I'm basically the Picasso of Nuzlockers, is what I'm saying. And according to Wikipedia, Picasso is an unsatiable Gen 4 simp, so we are going to be playing in Platinum. As per Egglocke rules, I wasn't going to be able to keep either Tortwig, Chimchar, or Piplup, so instead I let y'all vote on who I should give the rival. That way you could see the monkey, the penguin, or the turtle throughout the entire playthrough. And fittingly, y'all decided to make Barry go monkey mode. Historically, the Chimchar line is one of the better starters out there, so it's going to be pretty difficult to match that with the random Pokemon y'all gave me. Let's see what we got. Looks like we're starting with Pendulum the Gengar, a notoriously fast and strong special attacker. But somehow it gets better than that, because Pendulum has No Guard and Dark Void alongside Dream Eater to completely shut down any opposing Pokemon. Yeah, somehow I think we'll be alright against Barry. Pendulum is soon joined by a Rhyperior, a Regice, and a Deoxys defense. But despite the fact that I was handed 2 literal legendaries before the first gym, the most interesting egg that I received in the early game stretch was something slightly smaller. Meet the Hitter. This is a Shedinja, which means his HP is locked at 1. But don't worry, he has the ability Rockhead, so he won't take recoil damage while he's spamming Flare Blitz and Woodhammer. Shedinja is, of course, known for having a pretty low base attack stat, so that's why the Hitter comes with Swords Dance equipped, in order to increase his damage dealing capabilities. And that's not the only boosting move he has, because Double Team is going to prove that evasion strats are actually based and not cringe at all. That's right, rather than relying on Wonder Guard to survive, this beast of a Pokemon is going to dodge tank. A true Ryoma archetype if I've ever seen it. Although, hilariously, the Hitter doesn't even need to use his evasion strategies against our first rival fight, because Barry just spams normal attacks, and even without Wonder Guard, Shedinja is immune to them. Damn, between Pendulum and the Hitter, ghost types sure are awesome. I'm probably going to be happy with every single ghost type I get handed throughout this campaign.
12 seconds later.
This is Silly Guy. He's a Sableye with Wonder Guard in a pre-Generation 6 game, meaning that there is no Fairy type, ergo, no weakness for a Dark and Ghost Pokemon. Silly Guy is literally immortal. You might think that that is a welcome member to our team, but take a look at his moveset. Recover, Refresh, Toxic, and Nightshade. Silly Guy isn't going to be helping us that much in combat. And as such, I'd kind of just like to permanently bench him. But that's when the devious part about this Pokemon comes into play. Silly Guy is holding Mosaic Mail. In Generation 4, you cannot box a Pokemon while they're holding mail. And under the rules of the Egglock, I'm not allowed to remove a Pokemon's held item until that Pokemon dies. And since nothing can damage Silly Guy, he's not going to die. That means Silly Guy is stuck in our party forever. And since he is really just dead weight, it basically reduces our max team size from 6 down to 5. This isn't a friendly Pokemon, this is a saw trap in disguise. Well, I say nothing can damage him, but that's not actually true. Wonder Guard protects from attacking moves, but it doesn't do anything against status or other forms of damage. Unfortunately, there's not that many Pokemon who have Poison Powder or Toxic, and the only instance of Overworld Hail is after the 6th Gym Badge. I'd much rather get rid of Silly Guy sooner. Enter Rorik. His signature move is Stealth Rocks, which is a hazard that deals damage to all incoming Pokemon. Despite being incredibly broken in competitive, in an in-game playthrough, it generally doesn't bother you too much when the opponent throws up rocks. I tend to sweep Rorik by just hitting him with super effective water or grass attacks 3 times in a row. But these Stealth Rocks are our key to escaping the prison of Silly Guy's design, because if we keep switching him in and out, he will take chip damage until he dies. Then I can pry the Mosaic Mail from his cold dead hands and banish him to the depths of Poke Hell. Silly Guy's death was the most interesting thing to happen in the gym fight. As it turns out, an early game boss isn't really able to stand up to a Poison Heal Ice Ball spamming Reggie. I promise the boss fights will get more interesting from here on out. In theory, I could just stomp through the entire early game with my No Guard Gengar, but where would the fun in that be? Instead, an infinitely more fun way to tackle the early game is to have my Poison Heal Shuckle set up Substitute and multiple Dragon Dances until he has max speed and max attack, and then spam Brave Bird in order to sweep through the early game bosses. I use this method to defeat Mars at the Valley Windworks, and chat instantly falls in love with the iconic beast that is Molder the Shuckle. And who am I to deny his popularity? Flying is super effective against grass after all, so Molder is the obvious choice for a Gardenia sweep. But this is a Nuzlocke, not a solo run, so as awesome as Molder the Boulder is, it's only right to give some of his teammates their own time in the spotlight. Which is why I'm pleased to introduce Existence the Delcatty. She's full of bees. Upon reaching Hearthome City, we have some very important business to take care of. No, I'm not talking about fighting the gym leader Fantina, that comes later. First, we take our beautiful boy Wario Man the Aerodactyl to the contest hall. When I was a kid, I never really got into these side modes. I know a lot of people are excited about contests, but they just didn't appeal to me. But now that I'm an enlightened adult, I realize that I can use the accessories to turn Wario Man into a farting gremlin. And honestly, that's enough to convince me that Gen 4 contests are actually the pinnacle of Pokemon design. Basically what I'm saying is the reason that they're delaying Gen 10 better be to get more detailed fart particles in the return of contests. Otherwise, I'm not giving Game Freak a single cent of my money. But I should probably introduce Wario Man and his supporting cast, because I've been racking up encounters throughout the many early routes of the Sinnoh region. Wario Man himself is a stinky fellow. I don't know if the stench is garlic breath, farts, or both, but in combination with his King's Rock, Beat Up, and Rock Blast, Wario Man has a lot of chances to flinch the opponent. Kellic, on the other hand, is an extremely edgy Absol. With the dark powers of Shadow Ball and Shadow Force, he uses his Sword Dance and Ominous Wind in order to ask the Divisian Knights how much power weight they can handle. Wazy the Sentret also has the ability to use shadows, and not only that, but he has a Life Orb to power up his Shadow Claw and Magic Guard to protect him from the recoil damage. Bombastic also has super effective ghost moves powered up by the Expert Belt and Huge Power, which is the trait that she shares with Jimbo, the Huge Power Slacking. I'm pretty sure we're legally required to have at least one Huge Power Slacking in every single Egglocke, so thankfully, Jimbo helps us make our diversity quota. And of course, this team of 5 warriors is supported by a utility unit, our Rally Bot, who's the first Pokemon that I sent out against Fantina. Our goal is to get Omni Boosts with Ominous Wind and then pass them to a stronger Pokemon using Baton Pass. Unfortunately, Rallybot just does not end up lucky, and so Miss Magnimus one-shots it with a Shadow Ball. Wazzy tries to avenge his friend, but unfortunately Miss Magnimus is just too strong, so we have to bring out the big guns. Kellic Fire Emblem embraces the power of the Shadow Realm to delete Fantina's remaining 2 Pokemon. Now that's what I call main character favoritism. But the fun doesn't stop there, because before we can leave Hearthome City, I have another fight with my rival. Thankfully, we have a Delicati who knows Volt Tackle, an Aerodactyl who knows Drill Peck, and a Lumineon that knows Shadow Sneak and Ice Shard. Yeah, this rival fight isn't particularly challenging. Although my rival is a little bit suspicious that something strange is up based on the movesets and abilities that I'm employing against him. But there's no time to worry about that now, because the next gym fight is against Maylene, a fighting specialist. And flying is super effective against fighting, so you know what that means. It's time for another Molder Brave Bird sweep, baby! At +6 attack and speed, Molder is able to accomplish the impressive feat of killing Meditite. Unfortunately, Maylene's ace, Lucario, is slightly stronger than the Meditite she leads with. And so it seems Molder has met his match. Keep Silly Guy company in Poke Hell for me, you beautiful, beautiful soul. It's okay, Maylene. Ryoma will wait patiently for his revenge. But only for 25 turns. Oh no, actually it's only for 6 turns, because that's how long it takes to build up to max curse boosts. Well, I guess it's slightly longer because he's going to use Heal Order to heal up a bunch. How weird is it that 2 different Pokemon got Heal Order as their healing move of choice? I guess my audience just really likes bees. But Ryoma's not the only sword-locked Fire Emblem unit we add to our team. One of the encounters I haven't mentioned yet is Lindis, the speed boost Gallade with leftovers and a pretty incredible moveset. Leaf Blade, Sword Stance, and Psycho Cut are a simulation of her mastery of the Manikari. Meanwhile, Detect allows her to take advantage of the speed boost turn to make sure she outspeeds all foes. Truly, our encounters seem to be alternating between utterly worthless but funny gimmicks and completely busted monstrosities that could probably solo the game without any effort. And Barry learns firsthand that Lindis falls into the latter category. Spamming the super effective button doesn't make for the most interesting post-commentary, but boy was it fun in the moment. I decided to use a slightly different form of degeneracy against Crasher Woke. You see, Cringe the Dragonite comes with the deadly combination of Skill Swap and Truant, meaning that he can force my foe's Pokemon to loaf around every other turn. I combine this strategy with the 2014 Pokemon World Champion Pachirisu and the most cursed Rotom appliance, the Lawnmower, which has upgraded its grass coverage from an unimpressive Leaf Storm to a drought-powered Solar Beam. The 5th gym badge is mine in no time flat. Man, Pokemon really is a game for babies. All you have to do is give yourself an illegal combination of moves and abilities, and suddenly the whole world collapses at your feet. SMH, do better, Game Freak. From here, the Platinum campaign slows down quite a bit, as we do favors for Cynthia like curing Psyducks and delivering packages to her grandma. So this is as good a time as any to introduce you to the Pokemon that I've been using along the journey who didn't necessarily make it into any of the boss fights. There are, as you might expect, a few who were modeled after Fire Emblem characters, like Gonzalez the Heracross, whose high jump kick can self-damage similar to the Devil Axe in his starting inventory. Guy the Farfetch'd can use the lock-on guillotine combo to have a critical hit like FE7 Swordmasters. And Soren the Yamega has a series of wind-based spells in his inventory. After all, he's always lost in his books. But it wasn't just Fire Emblem-based builds. Vivian the Mischievous was instead modeled after a Paper Mario character. Ultra Crab was a crit-focused Kingler, combining Razor Claw, Super Luck, and a bunch of high critical hit ratio moves in order to hit the enemies really hard, sometimes. Balance was a Regigigas that traded slow start for huge power, so it doubled its strength instead of halving it. But its held item was an Iron Ball, which cuts its speed in half. Therefore, it was perfectly balanced, just as all things should be. At least until I took a look at its moveset and realized it was a special attacker, so that huge power wasn't doing anything for it. But then there were a few people who didn't seem to understand what I was asking for. For example, Tom Seasmore is a perfectly ordinary Caesar. Don't get me wrong, I love a Bug Steel Pokemon with access to Technician, Bullet Punch, Swords Dance, U-Turn, and Roost, but I mean, this is just an ordinary Caesar. And someone else just gave me a perfectly ordinary Hydreigon. I didn't even know Hydreigon was in Generation 4. I guess it must be a Macargo archetype, where for some reason it's just always associated with the generation after the one where it actually debuted. But I'm saving the best for last, and I'm not referring to a Ditto with Sandstream holding a Helix fossil. No. Instead, I'm talking about Stellax. This friend-shaped torture machine is running a moveset of Rest, Sleep Talk, Recycle, and Recover. And when combined with his iconic Lepa Berry, he just sits on the battlefield and PP stalls over the course of a bajillion turns. Because I value my time, I didn't use Stellax in that many battles. In fact, I reserved him for the most unfortunate Team Plasma grunt you've ever met. Even with animations off, it took us over 20 minutes to get rid of 2 low-level Pokemon with Stellax. But that entire time, he was in no danger. So, much like most of the Pokemon I've talked about, Stellax could pretty effortlessly get us through the entire game on his own. But not only does that go against the spirit of the Egglocke, where the fun is seeing what creations y'all cooked up with, but there's also a good chance that the majority of my audience would die of old age before I saw the end credits. The next set of bosses are pretty big pushovers. Cyrus gets defeated by the FE4 remake, Barry learns the harsh lesson that growths are actually better than bases, and Byron's gym leaders learn that slacking starts with Truant for a reason. As for the big man himself, well, it's time to return to Crab. That's right, I just swept the Steel-type gym leader with a Kingler. I am an Omega God gamer. With the next arc being another Team Plasma one, I'll surely stomp through all of the admins with no resistance. Shit. It's not really a big deal. I have Mega Swampert come in and click the Earthquake button a couple of times. So let's fast forward to Candice, because this was the first fight that actually put up a meaningful amount of resistance. I open with Bombastic, the priority spamming Luminion, and outspeed Sneasel with a priority 4 times effective Mach Punch. So far so easy. But then President Obama hits the field and things get complicated. His snow warning ability sets up the hail, and I want to turn that off before Frostlass comes out, because she will gain an evasion boost in the hail thanks to her snow cloak ability. So it's time for a valiant sacrifice. The best does what he was born to do, turns off the snow and turns on the sand. If it's any satisfaction to Lord Helix, he's not going to be the only planned death this battle, because I have a 1 durability Devil Axe I've been saving for a special occasion. Except for apparently Obamasto is faster than Shed Ninja, so the Devil Axe dies for nothing. Okay, new plan, gotta bring out the big guns. My Terra Poison Reggie Ice should be able to handle things from here. Cross Poison hits Obamasto's grass for super effective, but the fight's far from over, because next up is Piloswine, which, I'll be honest, feels like a weird choice since this is the generation that introduced Mamoswine, so you would want to show him off in the Ice-type gym, but whatever. I'm sure Game Freak knows what they're doing when it comes to constructing the Sinnoh Pokédex. Despite being a middle stage, Piloswine hits a lot harder than I expected. Still, Un just barely manages to hang on, or at least would if it weren't for the fact that it's sandstorming instead of hailing, because ice types are not immune to sandstorm damage, so Un goes down to the sand that I myself set up. And then, as if to rub salt in the wound, the very next turn, Piloswine sets hail back up. So the best sacrifice didn't even accomplish anything except for killing my own Pokemon. Alright, I guess it's up to Bombastic to clean this mess up. Aqua Jet is still super effective against Piloswine because Ice has no resistances other than itself, so we can take down the pig, but it's still gonna be an RNG fest against Frostlass. I just have to hope that my Shadow Sneaks are accurate enough to get this job done. And surprisingly, they are, despite Frostlass's best efforts by setting up a double team for even more evasion. Bombastic does not miss a single attack, which means despite my best efforts to butcher the fight, I have somehow managed to claim the 7th gym badge. Although the 3 friends we lost along the way should serve as a harsh reminder
that overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer.
I say should because I absolutely will not remember that lesson, and there will be more bodies lost to my own idiocy. But that's a problem for future Danny. Right now, my primary concern is blasting through Plasma Grunts by clicking the funny guillotine button. There's actually quite a lot of Team Plasma admin fights in this stretch of the game, and most of them result in 1 or 2 deaths on my part. But as heartless as it might sound, I have a very deep bench of gimmick Pokemon, so I'm perfectly willing to throw 1 or 2 expendables at all of my problems. After teaching Galactic Boss Cyrus about the power of Mega Evolution, it's time to move on to the Giratina fight. And technically I could just run away without engaging, but that's kind of boring. I want to kick Satan's ass to next Wednesday. Anyway, fun Pokemon fact, did you know that Giratina's signature move Shadow Force actually goes through Protect? Because I didn't, so rip Quack God.
Remind yourself that overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer.
Just like last time, Bombastic is there to clean up after my mistake. I'm sure glad I have this goated Lumineon to lean on, because my skills as a Pokemon trainer certainly aren't cutting it in this playthrough. Maybe I should ask a Discord bot for assistance in teaching me how to be a better gamer. Surely with his assistance, Volkner will be a breeze.
Overconfidence
Okay,
is...
we get it, Danny. You played Darkest Dungeon. You're really beating this joke to death.
Okay, fine. Let's just talk about the Volkner battle. I open with Ryoma, who uses Spore to put Jolteon to sleep. And then it's time for Mewbot's first lesson. He teaches me that ground-type moves are super effective against electric-type Pokemon, and thus my huge power Charmander absolutely bodies the fragile Jolteon. The next lesson is not to use inaccurate moves, which Mewbot teaches me by deftly dodging Focus Blast. But that's not all Mewbot teaches me about Raichu, because he intentionally procs Static to get himself paralyzed in order to demonstrate how dangerous status conditions can be. Unfortunately, this is the last lesson that Mewbot is going to teach me, because with the speed drop from Paralysis, he gets outsped by Electivire, and one-shot by the Thunder Punch. Rest in power, you beautiful Charmander. But by keeping Mewbot's lessons in mind, I can avoid any further casualties in the Volkner fight. Red Canyon doesn't have any ground-type moves, but he does at least have electric immunity, which is more than enough to handle his fellow Gen 4 evolution. Unfortunately, Luxray has Ice Fang. Mewbot must have taught Volkner about coverage moves, that two-timing bastard. I'm glad he's dead now. Thankfully, I have Gonzalez the Heracross in my back pocket, so no harm no foul. Red Canyon lives. With all 8 badges in hand, next up is Victory Road, and I have a pretty straightforward strategy for dealing with the various trainers that it's going to throw at me. Simply click the funny outrage button. Once I reach the Pokemon League, I start evaluating my options. I need to make a team for the Elite Four, but that's only 6 Pokemon, and I have dozens upon dozens that I haven't even used in random battles, let alone for boss fights. With Barry being the second to last obstacle in my way, I decide that I want to give him a good send-off. And so I pick the funniest team of 6 I can think of and engage with my rival one last time. I open with Opal, the Drizzle, and Pharos, and go for a perfectly accurate Thunder against Barry's lead Staraptor. But unfortunately, Staraptor outspeeds and U-turns to switch Snorlax to the front instead. Because of Snorlax's massive special bulk, I pivot to Ray the Absol, who has one job, making use of Gen 4's unnerfed self-destruct damage. For those who are not aware, in Generations 1 through 4, self-destruct actually halves the opponent's defense, so functionally it is double the displayed might. And as such, our Mage Boy's noble sacrifice is enough to take down the sleeping fatty. Next up is a death match between Angry Boy and Heracross, and would you believe it? Our Garchomp actually outspeeds the bug in order to land a critical hit outrage and one-shot him. Turns out Garchomp is pretty strong and pretty fast. Something to keep in mind for later, I suppose. Floatzel is actually able to outspeed with a quad-effective Ice Fang, but that is not enough to one-shot our pseudo-legendary, and so we clap back with Outrage and Angry Boy adds yet another body to his kill count. But sadly, all good things must come to an end. And after an Intimidate attack drop from Staraptor, Angry Boy is a little bit worried that he won't be able to hit the one-shot threshold. So he does the only thing he can to raise his kill count further. He hits himself in confusion and lets Staraptor finish the job. That's okay though, I have more meat for the meat grinder. My choice Scarf Rampardos, fittingly named F It We Ball, can just switch in, outspeed, and head smash the bird to death. And he does the exact same thing to Roserade, bringing my rival down to his final Pokemon, the deadly Infernape, who unfortunately can outspeed even a Scarfed Rampardos. At least we can say he died doing what he loved, murder. But I've saved the best for last, so it's time to defeat Barry's ace in style. Let's go gambling. Because of his high HP stat, our Wailord easily shrugs off a neutral Focus Blast from Infernape. And then it's time for the funny. Hustle Choice Band Explosion.
Miss.
Honestly, I could not have hoped for a better result than that. We still have Mega Swampert in the back, so I have the Gen 3 overpowered starter kill the Gen 4 overpowered starter, thus proving old school better than new school. Game Boy Advance was the peak of Pokemon. With that out of the way, I want to introduce you to the team that I will be bringing to the Elite Four. First up is the team leader, Opal the Drizzle Ampharos. Her expert belt means that she can deal super effective damage both with her perfectly accurate thunders and her coverage moves. Ice Beam for Bertha's ground types and Surf for Flint's fire types. The addition of Tail Glow also means she can potentially set up against some of the more passive leads in the Elite Four. And her ability to set up rain perfectly complements our next team member, not Mega Swampert, whose Swift Swim will let him outspeed foes, firing off powerful earthquakes, ice punches, and waterfalls. New to the team is Slurpster, a stall-oriented Pokemon. Toxic Heal Poison Orb would be enough recovery for some, but not Slurpster. He combines it with Leech Seed, Ingrain, and Aqua Ring to gain as much HP as he possibly can. He rounds off his moveset with Whirlpool in order to kill enemies slightly faster. Although it's worth noting that once Slurpster sets up in Grain, he's unable to switch out, making him a very all-or-nothing Pokemon. Fourth on the team is Godzilla. Wonder Guard on a Rock Dark type is about as effective as a Bug Ghost type, but at least he has more than 1 HP. The real reason I put Godzilla on the team, however, was for more funny explosion shenanigans. It may seem odd to commit an entire team slot in the final gauntlet to a meme, but the last 2 Pokemon on our team are Cringe and Lindis, so worst case scenario, I think I can handle anything the game throws at me. You see, the 2 of them combine with each other very well. Cringe can activate Skill Swap to give Truant to the opponent's lead Pokemon. Then Lindis comes in safely on a Loafing turn, and then uses the combination of Detect and Swords Dance to boost herself up to +6 attack safely, while also passively reaching +6 speed because of Speed Boost. But I'll save that deadly combination for when things get serious. I think Opal can handle Aaron and his bug types just fine. Well, I say that, but she immediately gets tricked by a U-turning Yamega, unleashing Thunder into Heracross instead of her intended foe. Worse still, the U-turn was a critical hit, so it's not safe to stay in and finish the job. So I pivot to Mega Swampert with the hopes of a Swift Swim sweep, only to get nailed by a massive Mega Horn which absolutely would have killed me if it crit. Still, Rain Boosted Waterfall is more than enough to take on the Beetle, and it's looking like our sweep might actually be possible. Unfortunately, these plans too are foiled by the fact that Vespiquen is too bulky for Swampert to take down reliably. She starts trying to heal stall me, but 2 can play at that game. It's time for the Slurpster to make his debut.
3 weeks later.
Thank God, I forgot how fucking long stall versus stall battles take. Anyway, who's next? Okay, so Steel does super effective damage to Rock, and Scizor is a notoriously strong offensive Pokemon in basically every generation, but Slurpster is ingrained, so we can't switch out. I'm sure it'll be fine, we have a lot of healing.
Your overconfidence is your weakness.
That's a lot of damage. How about a little more? Now that's a lot of damage!
Well, it seems like for far from the first time this playthrough, I drastically underestimated my foe, and it has cost us the life of another precious Shuckle. Well, having had my fun with Slurpster, I decide it's time to whip out the big guns, so Cringe and Lindis get to work deleting the rest of Aaron's team. And also Bertha's Whiscash. Although for Gliscor, I choose to do something slightly different. First, I switch in Cringe, but then I immediately pivot to Opal, in order to set up Drizzle for the remainder of the fight. The reason that I brought Cringe in was to ensure that Gliscor would not go for Earthquake, since that threatens the one-shot on our Electric Queen. But now that we have Rain active, I can switch Mega Swampert in. The combination of Swift Swim and Rain-boosted Stab Waterfalls means that he can outspeed and one-shot the remainder of Bertha's Pokemon. Unfortunately, Houndoom's Sunny Day makes a Mega Swampert sweep of Flint much less feasible, so after I let Opal take out the Hound, the duo of Cringe and Lindis once again set up for a phenomenally easy sweep. And I do the same thing to Lucian. Sure, this is kind of boring and anticlimactic, but I got handed this combination by pure happenstance. I'd be a fool not to use it. And now, all that remains is Cynthia, commonly regarded as the strongest champion in Pokemon history. Before the fight begins, all of my teammates jump out of their Pokeballs, which was actually really hype and exciting. But then, without warning, Cynthia throws her Spirit Tomb out, and it's time to duel. I will say though, despite her reputation, I don't actually think Cynthia is the toughest champion in the franchise. In fact, if we disregard a generation's Garchomp-based PTSD, I'd say Cynthia probably barely cracks the top 5 Pokemon champions. And it all comes down to her lead Pokemon, Spiritomb. I'm pretty sure the developers gave this to her because it's both a rare Pokemon and a Pokemon with no weaknesses, thus immediately setting the stage for a rather intimidating battle. But as anyone who's watched Imported Cheese would know, there's more to Pocket Monsters than just clicking on super effective moves. So it's pretty easy to send Spiritomb to the Shadow Realm if you're so inclined. Although I would argue that Spiritomb's most crucial weakness is what happens when you don't kill it immediately. Because despite being built like a more defensive Pokemon, this Spiritomb has an all-out attacking set for some reason. I wouldn't call 92 special attack terrible, but it's definitely unimpressive. For context, this value is tied with Chatot, Abomasnow, and Gastrodon, and Spiritomb's moveset isn't doing it any favors either. All 4 of its moves are resisted by Steel types, and 3 out of 4 are resisted by Dark types. Admittedly, Silver Wind is coverage against Dark types, but also, it's Silver Wind off of a Spiritomb. I think you'll be fine. So, while the back half of her team does have heavy hitters, including an enemy Garchomp, Spiritomb makes for the perfect setup fodder if you need to spend a turn or two boosting your stats in order to outspeed and one-shot the Landshark. Of course, this is irrelevant for us because we have the cringe Lindis combo, so literally every Pokemon makes perfect setup fodder, but in a vanilla context, Spiritomb's existence alone does a lot to drag Cynthia's difficulty back down towards Earth. But in the time it took me to go on that tangent, we managed to max out Lindis' stats and are ready to perform our final sweep. But just clicking Psycho Cut over and over again feels like a pretty anticlimactic way to round out the journey. This setup was fun the first few times I did it, but by now it's definitely worn out its welcome. I haven't even gotten to Explode Godzilla yet, so I decide that Cynthia's iconic Garchomp is the perfect target for our final explosion. So first things first, we need to find an opportunity to get the kaiju in safely, and for that, a sacrifice is required. I'm sorry, Opal, I had to do it for the vine. Next comes Cringe, so we can assign Garchomp Truant to give Godzilla the chance to go boom. Oh fuck, Garchomp's faster than Dragonite. Okay, let's assess the situation. I just threw away a free win against Cynthia, sacrificing 2 of my 5 Pokemon in order to try to set up for an explosion that I can no longer safely pull off. Tyranitar, Swampert, and Gallade are all outsped by Garchomp. Or are they? Because Opal set up the rain when she switched in, meaning Swift Swim is active, and Marsh Stomp should be able to outspeed Garchomp. Okay, my only hope for victory is firing off a 4 times super effective Ice Punch and hope that it's enough to eliminate the nightmarish dragon in front of me. Shit. Okay, Swampert is tanky. It's possible I can survive an attack. Okay, I can breathe a sigh of relief. We are able to kill Garchomp with Marshtomp. But the fight's not over yet, because Roserade and Milotic are still in the back. And with only 3 Pokemon remaining, it's definitely possible for Cynthia to get a surprise comeback. Especially now that Swampert failed to one-shot Roselia. So we are down to just Godzilla and Lindis. And since I still don't have an opportunity to set up for an exploding Godzilla, we functionally only have Lindis. But I've soloed a game with Lyn before, so I can do it again. I just need to channel the power of the Swordmasters. The good news is, since Roselia is so damaged, Cynthia is going to use a full restore on her turn, so I can safely use a Swords Dance in order to boost Lyn's attack by 2. Combine this with the fact that we're getting 2 turns of speed boost, and I essentially have a double Dragon Dance under my belt. But as crazy as it sounds, I'm not actually convinced this will be enough, because Milotic is very tanky, and its water moves are going to be boosted by Opal's Rain. Oh my god. We were dead to a critical hit, but that doesn't matter. We outspeed, we kill Milotic, we take the championship. It's honestly kind of fitting that in a run full of overconfident moments, I nearly threw away a guaranteed victory against Cynthia because I thought it would be funny if Tyranitar exploded, and then Tyranitar was one of the only 2 surviving members of my Elite Four team. Still, I think we can agree that there is a lesson to be learned in this run. And that lesson is I am fucking invincible. I can do nothing wrong. I tried my best to fumble the ball and still managed to come away victorious. And as such, clearly a baby game like Pokemon Platinum isn't enough to put my skills to the test. I crave a real challenge, which is why Season 2 of the Egglocke took place in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the hardest mainline Pokemon games. And as of the time this video goes public, there's actually time to catch the final Alola Egglocke stream, as I will be struggling my way through Victory Road and the Elite Four tomorrow starting at 1 o'clock EST. If you want to see as many silly Pokemon as possible, I highly recommend catching the streams live, as there are plenty of funny submissions that just don't end up making these post-playthrough summaries simply because including them all would make the video a bit too bloated. But I still want to give an earnest and heartfelt thank you to everyone who submitted something for the Egglocke. I had a blast on this journey when we did it last year, and it truly wouldn't be possible without all of you. So thank you. It's really humbling that so many people wanted to submit silly creations just for me to stream them. And, of course, as always, I also want to thank all of my patrons for financially supporting the work that I do on this channel. I hope you're happy knowing that your money goes towards sending as many shuckles to heaven as possible. Thank you, Eris, Len, Gameboo, Karosa, Fyron, Your Doctor, Guiji555, Smaz Ruby, Zycrom, Robin D, Alenby, Hound Dogs, Girlboss, Lizard Bongwater, Christopher Bueno, Mary McLean, Jaden, Shadow, McBoots, Calamity Callie, Thaythom, Andu, Reflect, A Clever Username of Lies, Erica Ford, YLO1, George Grenville the 7th PM, Jamie Collins, Thick Molder, Arvis, Tailored Muffin, Floahay, Faulty Videos, Lyra, Kyle Madison, Derek Williams, Just Riley, Anna Cabana, Some Trades, Dicelike, Ginger, Root Beer Pants, Queen Elizam, Aerith Emblem, Adele, Gabe the Green, Control Dages, Roman Kromancic, Knick-Knack Hammersmack, SUP, Caius Cole, Histoclop, Bree, Punch Fighter Champion, Eggman, and especially my Jagans, Toaster But Really, Elizabeth, Shermie's Wife, and Bethany. This video took a lot more work in the editing process than usual, hence why it came out so long after the playthrough. So if you can afford it, I would super appreciate you considering joining the names up on screen here for as little as $3 a month. But of course, please only donate if you can comfortably afford to do so. I don't want anyone going broke over Fire Emblem, or Pokemon. Regardless of what you choose to do though, I hope you have a wonderful day. Stay safe, gamers.